Hello my sweeties and welcome back to my channel. If you don't already know me, my name is Celise and thank you for joining my spooky little family. In today's video we will compare Texas Chainsaw 1974 and 2003. Let's get into the video. So today we have a very special guest whom y'all would recognize from Table Screams and all my other live streams, Queen Melissa, my partner in crime and very talented artist.
Swamp it.
Oh my god, how you doing today?
I am great. I'm excited.
Good. So Melissa and I go way back with Texas Chainsaw Massacre, so I was like, gotta have her on here for this video. It's like a movie that we used to watch together, I feel like a bunch of times, right?
Oh, girl, yeah. I think it was one of the first sleepover movies.
I think so. We even got matching t-shirts when we were in high school. I think these are like a decade old. Can you guys see? So if you guys have seen my other comparison video on House of Wax 1953 versus the 2005 remake, then this video is going to be super similar to that. First, we will discuss the 1974 film, what we like, what we didn't like, then we'll go into the 2003, same thing, and compare at the end, and give our rating as well. Now let's jump right into 1974. Directed by Tobe Hooper, starring Marilyn Burns, Gunnar Hansen, and Edwin Neal, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 1974 follows 5 friends who head out to rural Texas to visit the grave of a grandfather. On the way, they stumble across what appears to be a deserted house, only to discover something sinister within. Something armed with a chainsaw.
Hey, baby, a small beat.
So Melissa and I actually watched both of these films yesterday.
Yeah, literally.
Literally yesterday. I can say I still have the same thoughts. Texas Chainsaw Massacre 1974 is such an art piece and it is so iconic. So one thing that always stands out to me about this film is the cinematography, because visually this film is really stunning. Not just for that ending shot of Leatherface swinging the chainsaw in the air as Sally gets away, but for many other scenes that are super iconic. The use of the colors in this film also really help nail the tone, and that's something that I really loved. A great example of this is the scene where we see Kirk open that metal sliding door, and we see that like really gorgeous, which Melissa kind of like pointed out, the gorgeous red wall with all of the different animal skulls. Then Leatherface just like clocks him, and it's super real and unexpected.
You just know as soon as that door slides open and just like the tone of red, like it's done. The color says it all, the dead animals on the wall, it's like, yeah, you're not escaping that, which is something I notice continuously. It kind of really sets the mood. Like it really captures every emotion that they're probably going through perfectly through color.
Yeah, I think a lot of the coloring really just gives you that sense of dread, which like, y'all know I love a good sense of dread. I think that this is also really well done in the dinner scene. The use of the colors here is just like, it's so good.
So the dinner scene, there's so many like just they went off with this one, just the way that everything is cut so like fast and like in your face, the mixture of that and the noise. And then the close up of her eyes, like just twitching. It just has a way to like it really kind of crawls in your skin. Like it makes you want to like.
Yeah, that close up of her eye is terrifying.
It's just, and again, it's like even with the coloring, like it becomes very dull in that moment. And it's like, yeah, it's bright, but you could also feel that sense again of like the constant dread. Like this is not a situation anyone would ever want to be in. Have you seen Grandpa?
I mean, yes, her finger was just like sucked off by Grandpa. They're like ready to eat her. Like it's a bad time for her, I think. Another great thing is the foreshadowing of Kirk's death, because we kind of like figured this out together. You were saying that you caught on to Franklin earlier in the film pointing out as they passed the slaughterhouse that they used to like hit animals in the head with a sledgehammer, but they would still be alive, so they had to keep like hitting them over and over until they died.
Which they really did good at emphasizing that, because as soon as, like, going back to that same scene, that the first time that that door slides open, that we first see Leatherface, the first thing he does, he just whacks Kirk in the head with the hammer, and he drops for a second, and then he starts like shaking, and then he kind of like grabs him again and hits him again and just drags him away. So honestly, they nailed it. Like, it was the small consistencies throughout this movie, like with the early on dialogue and what actually happens to these characters. Chef's kiss.
Another thing I really like about 1974 are the masks. I am very obsessed with the Pretty Woman mask. I like kind of want it tattooed on me. One thing I wanted to say that I thought was really funny. While looking at the Pretty Woman mask, I was like, wow, that's what I look like after a long night of being out.
That's me after sweating my ass off in table screams with like my million pounds of makeup.
I was just gonna say, that's what I look like once we finish table screams. And I call you and I'm like, girl, thank God that's over. We did it! We did it again! Another thing I really liked about this film is how Tobe Hooper allowed Gunnar Hansen to develop Leatherface as he saw fit, which really does show in his performance, even though we obviously don't get any dialogue from him. But his body language and the sounds he makes are really well put together. You can tell that he spent a long time trying to figure out how this character moves and works, and so I really appreciated that. Actually, speaking of Gunnar Hansen, this kind of brings me right into performances overall. Everyone in the cast does a really great job here. I mean, obviously. Marilyn Burns as Sally, I mean, most of the film she is just screaming her head off, but it is so convincing. Every time I watch it, it always gets to me because it sounds so real.
Honestly, the commitment too, like to scream that much. But honestly, I feel like her screams genuinely add on to so much. Like, if this movie isn't already a sensory overload between the loud sounds, the drastic quick cuts when shit is getting real, add her screaming to it and you will lose your mind.
Really, the movie has such a grimy, very gritty feel to it, and just the acting only enhances that aspect of the movie. Everything is so chaotic about this movie. Now on to Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2003, directed by Marcus Nispel. After picking up a traumatized young hitchhiker, 5 friends find themselves stalked and hunted by a deformed chainsaw-wielding loon and his family of equally psychopathic killers. So this film stars Jessica Biel, Jonathan Tucker, Erica Learson, Eric Balfour, and R. Lee Ermey. So with this remake, for me personally, it's a little bit hard to compare them, as I feel like, and Melissa, I don't know if you agree, I feel like the 2003 version is in a way its own thing.
Oh yeah, they definitely stuck true to like the very basic idea of the plot of the original, but they took a lot of like creative liberties.
No, yeah, I can agree. I noticed that there's a lot of changes in this one that we will get to. But before I compare, I kind of want to talk about some things that I liked, and I think Melissa can agree. I really enjoyed the special effects and the gore in this movie.
Yes. Greg Nicotero was a part of the special effects team for this movie, and I'm like, that's why.
Our king.
Our king. Everything is just so gross, and it makes you feel disgusting.
This one definitely goes more out there than the original film, and it shows a lot more than the original film. I believe that's because Tobe Hooper actually wanted Texas Chainsaw to be PG-13.
Yeah. Yeah, he has said that, which is, it's your family-friendly cannibal movie.
This is the movie you should watch with your family for Thanksgiving. So personally, I am not someone that needs a lot of gore to feel scared of horror films, but this does definitely add to that ickiness that I think they were going for. Another thing I really liked about the 2003 is the kills. I think they were all done really well. Especially, Melissa was actually talking about this. the hook scene of Andy, there were a lot of similarities to the hook scene of Pam in the original. So that was like a nice little nod.
I feel like that's a very big thing that I did actually like about the remake. There was a lot, if you really pay close attention, there's a lot of little nods to the original, like that, of course, being one of the similarities to it. Little things like even Jessica Biel wearing like the same, the bell-bottom pants. And then on top of that, also, like, there's this one scene, like at the end of the original one, where the guy gets out of the truck and he just like throws the wrench at Leatherface. And he falls and he cuts his leg with the chainsaw. And they did a similar thing, just like in a different spot in the remake. And it kind of happened a little differently, but I appreciate those little nods to the original. I think that was like super cool and like well thought out.
That probably was one of my favorite things about this remake, is all of the nods to the original. The cinematography here, much like the original film, is really nice. And that is actually because it is done by the same person, Daniel Pearl, who did the cinematography for the original film. So we have to give credit where credit is due. Another person who returned to reprise their role was John Larroquette as the narrator, which we absolutely stand an icon.
People want Morgan Freeman to narrate their lives. I want that guy to narrate my life.
So one thing that I actually did like about this film is the use of greens. This film is very green, which I love. It's got that like Ring vibe going. I mean, it was the early 2000s.
It was a staple in the early 2000s. If you made a horror movie and that shit wasn't green, trash.
It's so true. It just didn't have the same vibe.
It really doesn't. I don't know. There's something about the green that really just like takes it there.
There were also a lot of very cool shots in this film. One that is very reminiscent of the first movie is the way that the camera pulls out with everyone as they hurry out of the car after the hitchhiker kills herself. Yep. I thought that was very well done.
I will say I like the shot where it goes from like Jessica Biel when she first sees Leatherface and she notices that he's wearing Kemper's face and it just clicks.
I have that next. You're so funny.
And then it just clicks that he is dead, and the look on her face, it's just the way, the movement of the camera and how smooth it was like.
I actually think that that's my favorite scene of the film, is when Aaron sees Leatherface turn and we see that it's Kemper's face. I mean, it's so effective. It's very similar to that moment that Sally has at the gas station, where there's just no hope. I think it's the sheer terror in her performance that really sells the scene. So that was awesome. So now that we talked about what we liked, I'm gonna move on to some things that we disliked. I felt that this film had some pacing issues, and there are a lot more characters in this one than the original, which is okay if they knew how to juggle all of it, yep. But I feel like they didn't.
Yeah, a lot of them almost feel like kind of unnecessary. Like, I don't really feel like they really did much for the story itself. The only one I would argue is the little kid Jedediah, because he did kind of play a part in helping Aaron escape from Leatherface in the house. Like, he's the only person that seems to have any sort of sanity. This poor child.
Yes. So I think a great example was when Aaron gets to the trailer with those two women that I cannot remember their names. And she's trying to get help, and these two women are just like forcing tea on her. This scene, to me, it just seemed like a scene to fill up space. Yeah. Because I feel like it didn't really add anything cool or interesting to get the story moving forward.
I don't want tea, I need a phone.
But yeah, honestly, I just feel like that scene was kind of whack. So sorry to anyone that enjoyed that. So one thing I do take issue with is the fact that this film completely ditches the iconic dinner scene where all the family tries to eat their victims. I feel like that's such an iconic moment that everyone knows and loves, and it would have been cool to see how Marcus Nispel would have handled that, but instead he was just like, no.
No? Okay.
The family is also different in the 2003 version, as they have 7 members of the family, and the iconic grandpa character from the first 4 Texas Chainsaw films is no longer there, which was very disappointing, to say the least.
I mean, he was a true icon on it. He was freaking weird and creepy. They replaced him with, I guess maybe this other guy could have been the equivalent to him, but even then, it's not the same effect. The guy that was in the wheelchair who was missing his legs, it was kind of like the weird, creepy grandpa. Got a little touchy-feely. I think it was just such a weird early 2000s thing to like over-sexualize things that did not need to be sexualized. So many movies did that.
It's just tacky.
I feel like you already get the hint that they would be the type of guy to
Right.
do these things without having to visually see it.
Right. Actually, another thing that I found really tacky in the 2003 version, the hitchhiker being a victim who got away from Leatherface could have been cool, but for some reason, that just did not work for me. And it was that really shocking scene which just felt really unsettling, but also tacky.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's like, again, like another very early 2000s cliche. Random violent acts happening that don't really add onto the story. It's just literally there for pure shock value.
Another thing with the whole hitchhiker subplot in this is the fact that we have to watch them figure out what to do with her body for 30 minutes of the movie. I was like, let's get it going. Where is Leatherface? Let's go. Let's move on. That is where I had a lot of pacing issues. I was like, let's go.
It just dragged on.
It did. It dragged on.
The basic idea could have been sold without dragging it for that long. Like, we didn't have to see them sit there for so long talking to this old lady. I will say one of my biggest pet peeves, just because like I'm very like into attention to detail, was the fact that this movie apparently does take place again in the year 1973, just like the original.
Yeah.
But just in terms of the outfits, like I wasn't really sold on the idea that it was in the 70s.
That's what I thought, actually.
The costumes, like the hair, I mean, they could have done a little bit more
Definitely.
visually to sell the era that it was in.
Definitely. Another thing that the 2003 remake does not have that I was really upset about is the amazing ending of Sally in the back of the pickup truck screaming. That's not here. And it is so sad.
Blasphemy. Are you kidding me? Like, that was such a good moment and it sticks with you. Whereas in this one, it was switched out to something that it's like, I hate to say it, but it's almost forgettable.
Yes.
Like, it just doesn't hit the same way. Like, instead in this one, you get Erin, like, yeah, she finally gets revenge on the cops. She runs him over a couple of times and steals the baby from the trailer and leaves. And that's it, period. Like, it's just not the same.
Yeah, I can agree. It's definitely not as effective in its ending.
This isn't to say that it should have had been an exact copy frame by frame. You have this creative freedom. Like, they allowed you to change this many things for the script. Like, dude, go all out.
Yeah, I agree. I think that he definitely could have brought more to the table than what he gave.
Yeah.
I don't know. I expected more from him, so it was slightly disappointing. Overall, if I had to rate them, I would give Texas Chainsaw Massacre 1974 5 levs out of 5, as it is absolutely timeless. And it is still one of my favorite horror movies of all time. And Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2003, even though it was not my favorite, I do want to be fair. So I think I'm going to give it 2.5 levs out of 5. And that is because I feel like they did do a lot of cool things. But overall, as a whole, this is not a film that I would reach for. Melissa, your thoughts?
For the original, I give it 5 old man brooms out of 5. And with that, I give 2003. I need to think of a cool thing. Ooh, 3 T's out of 5. I was actually on the same boat of amount like the 2, but the gore pushed it up.
Love that. She's got her own rating system here. So, Melissa, thank you so much for being here on the channel.
Of course.
In an official video that's not live.
Yes. Guys, this is like my legit YouTuber debut.
Yes. We have to convince Melissa to like make a Twitch account or something because we need more of Melissa on the internet.
Maybe. I don't know. This backdrop is kind of like selling me on it. Maybe like with better lighting.
Before you leave, actually, can you just give us all your socials and plug anything you want to plug?
Of course. If you don't already know, I am actually an artist and I like to paint spooky stuff. If you like all things spooky and creepy and you appreciate art and you want to help support smaller artists, you can follow my art page on Instagram at Strange Art, but I'm special and I spelt it weird because that handle was probably taken. So at STRAENGE art. And then you could also go ahead and give a follow on my personal just for some behind the scenes stuff, or if you just want to see me post every 3 to 4 months because I'm terrible at social media. It's _ Mel is strange. Let's be spooky together.
Yes, I love that. I will leave all of Melissa's links in the description box below. Be sure to follow and check out her very talented artwork. All right, you guys, that is it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe as it really helps me a lot. And be sure to click that little notification bell to be up to date every single time I upload. And let me know in the comments, which Texas Chainsaw film do you prefer? Do you like both? Did you hate the remake? I'd love to talk about it. Don't forget to check out all my socials and Melissa's down in the description box below. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!